Jonathan is a shining example of faith, courage, and loyalty in the Bible. His story is found primarily in the books of 1 Samuel, where his actions and character leave a lasting impression. Though he was the son of a king and heir to a throne, Jonathan's life is defined not by privilege, but by his humble and selfless spirit. Let's explore who Jonathan was and why his life still inspires us today. Jonathan was the eldest son of King Saul, the first king of Israel. This made him the crown prince, expected to one day rule over Israel. Saul's reign began with great promise, but as time went on, he drifted away from God's commands, leading to turmoil in his kingdom. Despite this, Jonathan remained faithful to God and stood out as a man of integrity. Growing up in the royal household, Jonathan would have been trained as a warrior and leader. As the king's son, he had access to power and wealth, but he never let these privileges make him proud or selfish. Instead, Jonathan used his position to serve others and honor God. Jonathan's character is one of the most remarkable aspects of his story. He demonstrated several traits that set him apart. Jonathan was fearless in battle and trusted God for a victory. One of his most famous acts of bravery is found in 1 Samuel 14. In this story, Jonathan and his armor-bearer attacked a Philistine outpost with no backup. Believing that God could save Israel, whether by many or by few, Jonathan boldly took on the enemy and brought about a great victory. Although Jonathan was the heir to Saul's throne, he willingly set aside his claim for David, whom God had chosen as the next king. Jonathan recognized God's will and supported David, even when it meant giving up his own future as king. Jonathan's loyalty to David is one of the most touching aspects of his story. Despite his father's jealousy and attempts to kill David, Jonathan remained a faithful friend. He risked his own life to protect David, warning him of Saul's plans and encouraging him to trust in God. Above all, Jonathan's life was marked by his faith in God. He trusted in God's sovereignty and sought to align himself with God's plan, even when it was difficult. His actions showed a deep reliance on God's power and guidance. Jonathan was not just a man of words, he was a man of action. His bravery in battle, his loyalty to David, and his unwavering faith in God made him a true hero of Israel. He believed that God could work through anyone who trusted him, and he lived out that belief in every part of his life. Jonathan's story reminds us of the importance of courage, selflessness, loyalty, and faith. Despite the challenges he faced, he remained steadfast in his commitment to God and others. His life serves as an example for us to follow, showing that true greatness comes not from power or position, but from a heart that seeks to honor God. 1 Samuel 13. Jonathan, the son of King Saul, was a courageous and faithful leader. At a time when the Israelites were oppressed by the powerful Philistines, Jonathan displayed remarkable bravery by attacking and defeating a Philistine garrison at Geba. This victory, though small in scale, acted as a spark that ignited a larger confrontation between Israel and the Philistines. Jonathan's actions inspired courage in the Israelites, who had been living in fear. Even when his father, King Saul, struggled with uncertainty and indecision, Jonathan stepped forward with confidence in God. His leadership demonstrated that one person's faith and courage could rally an entire nation. 1 Samuel 14. One of Jonathan's most memorable acts of bravery came during a daring attack on a Philistine outpost. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Jonathan trusted in God's power to bring victory. He told his armor-bearer, "Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." With only his armor-bearer by his side, Jonathan approached the enemy camp. Together, they launched a surprise attack, relying completely on God's strength. Their boldness caused panic among the Philistines, leading to confusion and chaos in their ranks. This miraculous victory, achieved by just men, encouraged the Israelite army to rise up and pursue the Philistines, turning the tide of the battle in Israel's favor. Jonathan's faith and trust in God were at the heart of his bravery. He showed that true strength comes not from weapons or numbers, but from reliance on the Lord. In the midst of battle, Jonathan's father, King Saul, made a rash decision. He declared an oath, commanding his soldiers not to eat until evening, hoping to keep them focused on the fight. However, this hasty command left the army weak and exhausted. Unaware of Saul's order, Jonathan ate some honey he found in the forest. The honey gave him renewed strength. But when Saul discovered this, he was furious and declared that Jonathan must die for breaking the oath. The people of Israel, however, recognized Jonathan's innocence and the critical role he had played in their victory. They stood up to Saul, saying, "Shall Jonathan die, who has worked this great salvation in Israel?" Far from it. Because of their intervention, Jonathan's life was spared. This moment highlighted the contrast between Saul's impulsive leadership and Jonathan's wisdom and faithfulness. Jonathan's bravery, faith, and leadership continue to serve as an inspiring example. He demonstrated that trust in God and courage in the face of overwhelming odds can lead to extraordinary victories. Even in challenging circumstances, Jonathan's actions showed the importance of integrity and reliance on God's guidance. 1 Samuel 18. Jonathan, the son of King Saul, formed a remarkable friendship with David, the young shepherd who became a hero after defeating Goliath. After witnessing David's bravery and faith, Jonathan felt a deep connection with him. Their bond wasn't just based on admiration. It was a friendship rooted in respect, trust, and a shared love for God. Jonathan recognized that God had a special plan for David, and that David was destined to become Israel's next king. Instead of feeling jealous or threatened, Jonathan showed incredible humility and loyalty. He made a covenant with David, promising to be his friend and alive forever. To seal this covenant, Jonathan gave David his royal robe, armor, sword, and bow, symbols of his position as the king's son and heir. By doing this, Jonathan willingly acknowledged David's future as God's chosen leader. 1 Samuel 19. Jonathan's loyalty to David was tested when King Saul, consumed by jealousy and fear, sought to kill David. Despite Saul being his father, Jonathan chose to protect his friend. He warned David of Saul's plans and helped him escape danger. Jonathan didn't stop there. He courageously confronted Saul and pleaded for David's life. He reminded Saul of David's loyalty to him and the great victory he had brought to Israel by defeating Goliath. Jonathan's words briefly softened Saul's heart, and Saul promised not to harm David. However, Saul's jealousy soon returned, and Jonathan continued to put himself at risk to protect his friend. 1 Samuel 20. As Saul's hatred for David grew, Jonathan and David met in secret to discuss Saul's intentions. Jonathan promised to find out the truth about his father's plans and warn David if he was in danger. The two friends renewed their covenant, vowing to remain loyal to each other and to extend kindness to each other's families, no matter what the future held. When Jonathan confirmed that Saul was determined to kill David, the two friends shared an emotional farewell. They wept together, knowing that they might not see each other again. Jonathan told David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord." Jonathan's friendship with David is one of the most beautiful examples of loyalty and selflessness in the Bible. Despite the challenges they faced, Jonathan remained faithful to David, putting their covenant and God's will above his own interests. His actions remind us of the importance of true friendship, one that is built on trust, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to do what is right. Jonathan was not only a brave warrior, but also a dutiful son. As the crown prince of Israel, he had a significant role in his father's army. He remained by King Saul's side during many battles, faithfully serving the nation of Israel and supporting Saul's leadership. Even when Saul's decisions were impulsive or unwise, Jonathan chose to honor his father. He understood the importance of loyalty and responsibility as Saul's son and the future heir to the throne. Jonathan fought valiantly in battles, not for personal gain, but out of dedication to his father and the people of Israel. Jonathan's bravery and skill as a warrior earned him respect from the soldiers and people alike. He worked to uphold the dignity of his father's reign, even as he secretly supported David, knowing that God had chosen David to be the next king. This balance between loyalty to Saul and submission to God's plan shows Jonathan's remarkable character. 1 Samuel 31. Jonathan's ultimate act of loyalty to his father came during the final battle of King Saul's reign. The Israelites faced the Philistines at Mount Gilboa in a fierce and tragic conflict. Despite knowing that Saul's reign was coming to an end, and that David would eventually take the throne, Jonathan did not abandon his father. He stood by Saul's side, fighting courageously to defend Israel. During the battle, the Philistines overwhelmed the Israelite forces. Jonathan, along with his brothers, was killed in the fighting. Their deaths marked the end of Saul's dynasty and brought great sorrow to the nation of Israel. Jonathan's loyalty to his father was unwavering, even to the point of sacrificing his life. He chose to stand with Saul in his final moments, fulfilling his duty as both a son and a soldier. Jonathan's life is a powerful example of faithfulness and devotion. He balanced his loyalty to his father with his obedience to God's will. Though his life was cut short, Jonathan's courage, integrity, and love for both his father and his friend David left a lasting legacy. His story reminds us of the importance of honoring our responsibilities while remaining true to God's plan. To Samuel 1, when David heard the news of Jonathan's death, he was overwhelmed with grief. Jonathan, his dear friend and brother in spirit, had fallen in battle alongside his father, Saul. David could not contain his sorrow. He knew that Jonathan's death marked the end of an era, not only for Saul's family, but also for the deep bond they shared. David's heart was broken, and in his mourning, he composed a powerful lament, a song of sorrow and tribute to his beloved friend. In this heartfelt poem, David expressed the pain of losing Jonathan, someone he had trusted and loved with all his heart. David's words were filled with love and admiration for Jonathan. He praised his courage in battle, his kindness, and his unwavering loyalty. He remembered the countless moments when Jonathan had shown him kindness, even at the risk of angering his own father, King Saul. The bond between them was stronger than words could describe. And David poured his emotions into the lament. David's grief was not just for the loss of a friend, but for the loss of a relationship that had been built on trust, love, and mutual respect. He described Jonathan's love as being deeper than any earthly bond of love that surpassed even that of brothers. This bond was unbreakable, forged by God, and David knew that no one could replace Jonathan. In his lament, David also recognized the valor and nobility of Jonathan's life. Jonathan had fought fearlessly for Israel and had always acted with honor. David honored his memory by remembering the good in Jonathan, his strength, his integrity, and the way he had supported David through thick and thin. David's lament for Jonathan was not only a personal expression of sorrow, but also a public declaration of Jonathan's greatness. David wanted the world to remember how special Jonathan was, how he had been a loyal friend, a courageous warrior, and a true son of Israel. Though Jonathan was gone, David's love for him would never fade. His grief would eventually turn into gratitude for the time they had shared. David's lament was a tribute to the lasting legacy of his friend, whose spirit would live on in his heart forever. To Samuel 9. After Jonathan's death, David never forgot the promise he made to his dear friend. Jonathan had once asked David to show kindness to his family if anything happened to him. David, remembering this vow, sought out any remaining relatives of Jonathan to honor the covenant they shared. David learned that Jonathan had a son named Mephibosheth, who had been crippled since childhood. Despite his disability, Mephibosheth was still part of Saul's family, and David saw it as his duty to keep his promise to Jonathan by showing kindness to him. David sent for Mephibosheth and brought him to the palace. Mephibosheth, fearful of what David might do, came trembling, not knowing whether he would be treated with mercy or punishment. But David assured him that he had nothing to fear. David told Mephibosheth that he would restore all of Saul's lands to him, making sure he had enough to live on. He even invited Mephibosheth to eat at his table, treating him as one of his own sons. This act of kindness was not just a simple gesture, it was a fulfillment of the promise David had made to Jonathan. By showing kindness to Mephibosheth, David honored his friendship with Jonathan and ensured that his legacy would continue. Mephibosheth was deeply moved by David's generosity. He humbled himself before David, acknowledging that he was unworthy of such grace. Yet, through David's actions, Mephibosheth was given a new life, a life of dignity and honor. This act of kindness reflected the deep friendship and loyalty that had existed between David and Jonathan. Jonathan's legacy lived on through David's commitment to his family, a testament to the power of friendship, loyalty, and promises kept. Jonathan's life was marked by his deep trust in God's sovereignty. In the midst of battle, he believed that the outcome was in God's hands, not determined by numbers or human strength. When he led a small group to attack the Philistine outpost, he demonstrated unwavering faith, saying, "Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving. whether by many or by few. Jonathan knew that God was in control of Israel's future, and was willing to trust God's plan for the nation, even when it meant difficult decisions. His confidence in God's will shaped his leadership and influenced the course of Israel's history. One of the most powerful aspects of Jonathan's life was his selfless friendship with David. Even though Jonathan was the crown prince, he recognized that God's plan was for David to become the future king of Israel. Despite his own ambitions, Jonathan put David's welfare above his own and supported him wholeheartedly. He gave David his royal garments, symbolizing his acknowledgement of David's future reign. Jonathan's friendship was a model of true loyalty, as he did not allow jealousy or rivalry to cloud his judgment, but rather chose to walk alongside David as a trusted companion. Jonathan's story is also a testament to his ability to maintain righteousness amid conflict. While his loyalty to his father, King Saul, was important to him, Jonathan also recognized the divine calling on David's life. This put him in a difficult position, as he had to balance his loyalty to his father and his growing allegiance to God's chosen leader, David. Despite the tension and Saul's growing animosity toward David, Jonathan chose to confront his father's irrational hatred and stand up for what was right. His integrity in the face of such a complex situation was a reflection of his strong moral character. Jonathan demonstrated remarkable humility and sacrifice in his relationship with David. As the son of the king, Jonathan had the right to the throne, but he humbly surrendered that right for the sake of God's chosen King David. His willingness to set aside his own personal claim to the throne showed his deep understanding of God's plan, and his trust that God's will was greater than his own desires. Jonathan's sacrifice was a powerful act of selflessness, and it highlighted his humility in the face of his father's and his own aspirations. Jonathan's legacy lived on far beyond his death. The covenant he made with David, marked by love, loyalty, and commitment, was a promise that affected future generations. David, after Jonathan's death, honored their bond by showing kindness to Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth, ensuring that his family would be cared for. Jonathan's example of faith, friendship, righteousness, and sacrifice continued to impact Israel long after his passing. His legacy was not only seen in the lives he touched directly, but also in the lasting effects of the promises he kept and the choices he made. Through his actions, Jonathan left a mark on history that transcended his own lifetime. Jonathan's life teaches us the importance of trusting in God's power and his plan, no matter the cost to ourselves. When Jonathan faced battles, whether against the Philistines or his father Saul, he always believed that victory depended on God's will, not on human strength. His famous words, "Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few," show his firm belief that God could accomplish his purposes, no matter how impossible the situation seemed. Jonathan's life reminds us to trust God's plan for our lives, even when it may not align with our own desires or come at a personal cost. By trusting in God's sovereignty, we are assured that He will always guide us in the right direction. Jonathan's deep friendship with David teaches us the importance of loyalty and humility in our relationships. Despite being the crown prince, Jonathan willingly gave up his royal status to support David, recognizing that God had chosen David to be the future king. He valued his relationship with David over his own ambition. His humility in putting God's plan first and his loyalty to his friend, even when it meant personal sacrifice, offer a powerful example for us to follow. Jonathan's example challenges us to value the people in our lives, to act with loyalty, and to approach our relationships with a heart of humility, always seeking the well-being of others over our own desires. Jonathan's story shows us the importance of standing for what is right, even when it is difficult. He found himself in a tough spot, loyal to his father King Saul, yet knowing that God's plan was for David to become king. Despite the tension and the risk of angering his father, Jonathan chose to speak out for what was right, even confronting Saul to defend David. His willingness to stand up for righteousness, no matter the cost, reminds us that doing what is right isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. Jonathan's life challenges us to stay true to our values and to act with integrity, especially when faced with pressure or difficult circumstances. One of the most powerful lessons from Jonathan's life is the importance of leaving a legacy of faithfulness and kindness. Jonathan's commitment to his covenant with David didn't end with his death. David honored their covenant by showing kindness to Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth, ensuring that his family was cared for. Jonathan's faithful friendship and his selflessness in placing others before himself left a lasting impact. His story teaches us to live in such a way that we leave behind a legacy of faithfulness, kindness, and love. Our actions, big and small, can have a lasting effect on the people around us and on future generations. By living with loyalty, integrity, and kindness, we can create a legacy that reflects God's love and faithfulness. In conclusion, Jonathan's life provides us with valuable lessons on trusting God, valuing relationships, standing for righteousness, and leaving a meaningful legacy. His example of loyalty, humility, and faith continues to inspire us to live with integrity and to put God's plan first in all that we do. May your spiritual journey be filled with God's grace and peace. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to inspire others on their walk with the Lord.